You got to remember your status. You got to realize your status. Most people have been indoctrinated throughout 12 years of government indoctrination camps, i.e. schools, to follow orders. Unquestionably follow orders from a supposed authority, which in fact is a whole load of nonsense. That's why people are so compliant towards under the authority of police officers, of government, whoever's writing these unlawful acts and legislations, which is not law. The only law that you should be following is natural law. As derivatives, it's handy to know your local constitution. For example, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution 1901 is the Australian Constitution, and a handful of acts like most of these acts, statutes, directives are in gross violation of current acts. Say Privacy Act 1988, Disabilities Discrimination Act 1992, gross violation of that, to ask for any personal medical information. Harassment Act 1997, and it's always handy to quote, say, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which I think it's 1948, but there's a few later, 1971 updates to that. So, but you got to remember your status. So, the actual hierarchy of law: creator, man or woman, living human being, not persons. Do not be a person. That is called joinder. When you agree to being a person, you agree to being the bottom feeder. So refer to yourself as a living man or woman. It's handy to have a declaration in a form of affidavit. Say, I've got an affidavit of status that I've modified for Australia from Alphonse Fagiola, which is, I'm learning all of his material, but he's got a good website with all the documents. I am has sent me to you.com, and you just sign up for free and download all the documents. So I've modified one affidavit of status for Australia, which is, I'm sharing it, free to share. Declare that removes all presumptions. So you're stating that you're a living man or woman, and you do not tacitly acquiesce or contract with persons or corporations, which is basically by default. When they put out a public notice, say lockdown, here's a lockdown for this particular Commonwealth, this particular area, by default, unless you rebut it and state that basically, how does this apply to me? How does this apply? Because no acts, statutes, or legislations apply to a living man or woman. You will not find the word man in any acts or statutes. It is always persons. So getting back to the hierarchy of the law: creator, man created governments to protect the right to serve the people, and governments created corporations, which is most countries are corporations now. So by joinder, if, say, an alleged authority figure, nobody has more rights than you. Say a police officer or someone from the government asks you, do you understand? You never say yes. You never say you understand. It's legalese. It's a spell. If you agree to understand, that means you stand under. If you respond to being a person, that means you drop yourself down to the bottom feeder level of corporations, being subject to corporations, which you don't want to do that. As a man, as a living human being, you have inalienable rights: right to free travel, right to earn a living, right to trade, right to... Basically, the only laws you can be subject to is do no harm, cause no loss. And love, or you can express it as love thy neighbor, love thy creator. Most law is actually originated from the King James Bible of 1611. But I wouldn't put too much faith in it, as most Bibles have been manipulated in around the 4th century and written by, it's a king, it's part of the royalty. So there is stuff in there that is unfavorable. But as long as you realize your status, you follow natural law. So if somebody's trying to apply something to you, how does this apply to me? It's a legislation. Well, who's written the legislation? Doesn't matter if 100 people got together and written the legislation. Everybody's created equal. Nobody has more rights than you. So it's a rule of zero. So if the next human being, let's just call a person, next person, anyone is trying to tell you something, is trying to put you under their jurisdiction, they have zero more rights than you. If 2 people come up with something on the paper that they're trying to apply to you in a form of an act, 0 plus 0 is 0. They still have 0 more rights than you. As human beings, as man or woman, we have inalienable rights. It's by tacit acquiescence and compliance. People forget that, and they've been indoctrinated to basically fall into joinder, agree to being the person, agree to contracts. For anyone to be able to tell you what to do in a form of an authority, there's only 2 possible scenarios. You have to be the slave, which is, I'm pretty sure slavery is illegal now, or you have to have a contract with them, which none of them are true. There's certain elements to a contract. Meeting of the minds, full disclosure, signed by 2 sentient beings. All of these public act statutes, they're not contracts. It's an offer. It's an offer to contract. If you agree to being a person, basically if you agree to any authority over you, you then form a contract by tacit acquiescence or by actually replying to the fiction as opposed to a living man or woman. But yeah, so basically you can stand solid, you can stand on your constitution and refer to that, because any acts, statutes that are inconsistent with the constitution of your Commonwealth shall prevail. Section 109 of UK Australia Constitution, for example. And Section 92 is you have a right to travel freely, unimpeded, anywhere within the state, within your local Commonwealth, your local state, say a land mass. And basically, no acts, statutes. The only way acts, statutes, and legislations, which are formed to serve the people, essentially, the only way that can have any authority over you is by consent. There's a Commonwealth case, Cruden versus Neil, 1796, which basically, it's a Supreme Court case that the ruling from that can be used to date in any Commonwealth countries if there's no equivalent in your particular country. And yeah, so everything is by tacit acquiescence contract, 3-step process. If you get a notice, for example, if you don't rebut it, that means within the time frame stipulated, that basically says that you've tacitly consented to that. So rebut anything, and we use the same process. We use 3-step process: notification, no response, Second notification of default. Now you're in default. No response. And then private settlement agreement and affidavits, bang. Affidavits are prejudicial. That means no judge or magistrate can rule over your affidavit. The only way an affidavit can be rebutted is point for point by another affidavit by a living man or woman. Done.